Welcome to This Explainer. We spend so much of our time and energy trying to figure out the people around us, right? We're constantly navigating office politics, trying to figure out who's really on our side, who's against us, who we desperately need to impress. Well, today we are flipping that entire concept on its head. We're going to dive into some truly profound insights from Professor Dr. Pandi Netarajan, and we're going to completely reconsider who the most important person in your life actually is. Because as it turns out, your relationship with this one specific person dictates literally everything else you do.
So, society basically trains us from day one to constantly scan the horizon for external factors. But let's look at this ancient insight from Kanyen Pungendranan. It perfectly captures this massive blind spot we all seem to have. We're taught that good and evil are things delivered to us by other people, almost like packages. So what do? We constantly search the world for supportive friends who share our exact values, and we try our hardest to avoid external adversaries. We are just always looking outward.
But here's the catch. That constant outward scanning, it creates a huge problem. Think about it for a second. Who is the one person we completely, entirely overlook in this exhausting process of analyzing everybody else? We spend our days dissecting the motivations of our bosses, our partners, our rivals, but we completely miss the one person who took that very first breath with us and who's going to be there right up until our last. And that person is you.
It sounds a bit crazy, but it's absolutely true. You are simultaneously your own greatest ally and, at the exact same time, your most dangerous adversary. Think about how your mind works. When you really need it, you have this incredible capacity to spot amazing opportunities and push yourself through tough times with real compassion. But that very same mind, it can instantly manufacture a brilliant, airtight excuse not to take a leap. We rationalize our worst mistakes, we fiercely defend our prejudices, and we stubbornly refuse to acknowledge our weaknesses. We are literally playing both sides.
And this brings us to a really beautiful philosophical anchor from the Kaivalaya Navanitham. It suggests that true, lasting protection from harm, it doesn't actually come from building massive emotional walls against other people. It comes from deep self-knowledge. Look, life is always going to throw wild, unpredictable circumstances at us. People will let us down, misfortune happens, but our response to what happens and the meaning we actively choose to give it is 100% within our control. And unlocking that control requires truly understanding yourself.
So, what does it actually mean to know yourself? It goes way beyond just listing out your favorite movies or knowing your pet peeves. It requires a brutal, yet incredibly balanced honesty about who you are at your absolute core. True self-knowledge is this delicate art. It's recognizing your unique strengths without letting your ego inflate into full-blown arrogance. And simultaneously, it means looking your deepest weaknesses dead in the eye and accepting them without letting them defeat you.
To get to that kind of objective truth, we've got to start asking ourselves some seriously uncomfortable questions. And the best place to start is with an honest audit of our capabilities. Let's be real, it is incredibly easy to flatter ourselves when we're writing a resume, right? And it's just as easy to totally beat ourselves up at 2 a.m. when we're doom scrolling. But it is remarkably difficult to sit down and objectively list what we are actually capable of and where we genuinely fall short.
Okay, so once we've audited our skills, we need to look inward again and shine a super bright light on the hidden fears that are actually dictating our daily choices. You have to ask yourself, what am I genuinely afraid of? Because so many of our decisions, from the careers we choose, to the relationships we just kind of settle for, to those tough conversations we desperately avoid, they are secretly being driven by fear. And until we name those fears, they're just going to keep steering the ship from the shadows. Next up, we have to look at our biases. Ask yourself, what prejudices are actively influencing my judgment? Which of my ingrained habits and automatic assumptions are quietly harming my relationships or limiting how I see the world? I'll be honest with you, admitting this stuff takes a massive amount of humility. It is not easy.
And that brings us to the crucial point. This is maybe the toughest question of all, because while we are absolute experts at finding the faults, the inconsistencies, and the hypocrisies in everybody else, we are remarkably, almost comically blind to our own. Where are you telling yourself a story that simply isn't true? Where are you playing the victim when actually you had a hand in the outcome? Our brains are literally hardwired to protect our self-image, making this a really tough habit to break.
This is exactly where our ego steps in like a master illusionist. It constantly morphs our obvious flaws into these comfortable, really noble-sounding virtues just to protect that self-image. Think about it. When reality hits us with some valid criticism, our ego instantly disguises it as an insult, so we can just brush it off. When we're totally paralyzed by fear, the ego whispers, "Hey, you're just practicing prudence, you're being careful." When we're being utterly stubborn and refusing to listen, we dress it up as having strong conviction. And when we're driven by pure, unchecked desire, the ego totally convinces us it's an absolute necessity. It is wild how we do this to ourselves.
Because of all these little illusions, we really need to completely redefine what it means to be self-aware. Narcissism is just falling in love with a fake image of yourself. True self-awareness is the exact opposite of that. It's having this intense curiosity about your own inner workings. It is the relentless courage to look in the mirror, strip away all those noble-sounding excuses your ego just invented, and demand the absolute truth from yourself.
Now, only when we start practicing this kind of internal honesty can we actually start properly evaluating our external relationships. There's this great piece of wisdom from Through He warned that a ruler who doesn't have people willing to criticize him, he doesn't even need an enemy to destroy him. His own unchecked mistakes will do the job perfectly fine. And obviously, this profound wisdom extends way beyond kings and queens. It applies directly to your everyday life.
This means taking a really hard look at who we actually consider a friend. Are you just surrounding yourself with comfortable friends? You definitely know the type, the avatars of toxic positivity who constantly agree with you and applaud blindly. They make you feel great in the moment, but they never ever push you to grow. What we actually need is the loyal friend, the one who challenges your assumptions and tells you exactly what you do not want to hear. Because without them, our temporary mistakes will eventually calcify into permanent habits.
And you know what? This drastically changes how we should view our adversaries too. Ironically, the person who constantly disagrees with you might actually teach you significantly more than the one who always claps for you. An enemy, or even just strong opposition, can act as a phenomenal teacher. They actively stress-test your arguments, they ruthlessly expose the weaknesses you were desperately trying to hide, and they force you to deeply examine ideas you might otherwise have just taken for granted. But listen, even with difficult friends and challenging adversaries, the most dangerous opponent isn't actually out there. It's the enemy within. And this enemy wears a lot of different faces: complacency, willful ignorance, those sudden flashes of anger, deep-seated fear, and quiet envy. But most dangerously, it manifests as an absolute unwillingness to change. It is that incredibly comfortable, arrogant inner voice just whispering, "I am right. I have absolutely nothing more to learn." I promise you, that single thought is far more destructive to your potential than any external adversary could ever hope to be.
So, how on earth do we defeat the enemy within? Well, it starts by actively cultivating the single most important friendship of our lives, our friendship with ourselves. We need to learn how to speak to our own minds with a very strict balance. We need absolute kindness to forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, combined with the unflinching honesty required to make sure we don't repeat those exact same mistakes tomorrow.
Being a good friend to yourself doesn't mean you just blindly endorse every passing impulse you have. Just like a good external friend, you need a framework. You have to genuinely celebrate your strengths, for sure, but you also have to acknowledge your weaknesses without shame. You have to be willing to accept correction, even when it really stings your ego. You need to extract the actual painful lessons from your failures instead of just trying to forget they happened. And above all, you must remain flexible enough to change when change is necessary.
All of this builds into a really powerful rhythm for living. Think of it as the path to true mastery, based on Dr. Natarjan's insights. It's a step-by-step process. First, before you go out searching for the right friends, understand yourself. Second, before fearing your enemies, understand yourself. Third, before judging the actions of others, examine your own. And finally, before you set out to change the world, you must have the courage to change what desperately needs changing within you. The ultimate prerequisite for interacting with the external world is mastering your internal one.
We have all heard that old saying, right? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But as we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to take away a new, much more elevated version of that rule. Keep your friends close? Yes. Keep your enemies closer? Certainly, so you can learn from them. But above all else, keep yourself closest of all. Be relentlessly honest with that person looking back at you in the mirror. So I'll leave you with this final thought to carry with you. Are you ready to finally strip away the ego, drop the excuses, and face the person closest to you?